Hello and welcome to the Cavern of Terror.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Cavern of Terror. I had a little bit of time today after the creepy crawl that I was part of today. It was a 24-hour constant stream going from different channels of smaller horror channels that, were hit by the demonetization. I can't talk. I was in hour 17, I believe, with Ross from Random Horror. Had an awesome conversation. You can go over to Random Horror and check that out. There are so many underrated channels out there that deserve a sub, and they, deserve a little bit more watch time. There's some great, very talented people out there. This, of course, was put together by Gory from over at the Horror Addicts. Thank you for letting me be involved. They're some of my best friends here on YouTube. They're awesome people, and this was an awesome thing for them to do. But why we are here today is to talk about something, if you don't already know from the title of this video, which you probably already do. We're going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, something that I don't really ever talk about on here, and that is a video game series. I'm a gigantic Resident Evil fan. If you're an older subscriber to my channel, you'll know that I reviewed all 6 of the Resident Evil live action films. I have a whole playlist for that Resident Evil series. I went from the first one to the final chapter. Interesting thoughts on those. Something that you don't know is that I am a huge fan of the game series, and I just want to tell you and show you some of the stuff that I have in my Resident Evil collection. Excuse me, I have to turn off notifications for Twitter because that's going to bother the hell out of me. Okay, Twitter notifications are off, so I shouldn't have to worry about that right now. I will turn them back on though. So first, let's talk about the OG series, Resident Evil, the Director's Cut. If you guys haven't noticed before, usually underneath Ghostface is where I have Resident Evil 2, 3, well, Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 all on PlayStation because they're some of my favorite games of all time. There is some wear and tear on this thing. I don't even think it's in there. No, it is. It is in there. Resident Evil. I love the booklet for this too because it has character bios in the back. Really old school. Love it. Now supports DualShock. But this is the director's cut. This is the more gorier version. This has, I don't think has the unedited opening. There is a R-rated opening that's only on the Japanese cut of the game. But this is still fun. This is not the first horror game I've ever played, but the second. The first Resident Evil game I played was Resident Evil Survivor. That is why I'm afraid of spiders. Every single time I play the first Resident Evil, I usually play with the Chris character. Chris is the harder version to use. He's got a smaller inventory system. You can't put as many items in. Even if you play on easy, it's still smaller. I do play as Jill at times, and she's a fun character. Hers is a little easier to play. It's got a bigger inventory and all that, but it's a fun game. The giant spider part, not my favorite. Resident Evil 2. This is also the DualShock version. I don't know if both are in here. No. Yes, they are both in here. This one is really cool because you could play the same game but with 2 different characters. So you could play as Leon in one version, which is the one I have right here. It's upside down. But there's Leon, and then in the other version, you can play as Claire, and Claire is the sister of Chris, if you guys didn't know. Really fun game, just as good if not better than the original. Love Resident Evil 2. I've beaten it so many times. I beat it like 4 or 5 times with the different characters. Really fun game. But next, well, before we get to next, I want to talk about the RPD, because the RPD is awesome. It's like the mansion from the first game, but just like bigger and creepier. And I love the mansion hall, or not the mansion hall, but the RPD hall. It's so creepy. I love the atmosphere in these games. One of the creepiest covers of all time. I still want to get a poster of that because that is so cool. My favorite Resident Evil game in the whole franchise, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. This is probably one of my favorite games ever. You play as Jill Valentine again. You're hunted by that big ass dude the entire game. Super bloody, super like crazy. This is the first two games combined into a badass game. Like, I'll tell you how badass this game is. I'm saying badass a lot because this is extremely badass. You can tell this had some love too. If you play on easy mode with Jill, and you can play as two different characters, but we'll get into that later. Jill starts out the game with automatic semi-auto rifle or automatic machine gun. It is awesome. You also get to play as UBCS member Carlos, and that's only for a small portion of the game. I really wish you could play him in another version. I wish they would have continued the dual storyline with him like they did in Resident Evil 2. Super fun. Can't make it through the church section without a bazooka because, like I said, I'm terrified of spiders. But super fun. I love the Operations Watchdogs part. The storyline is really cool. The Mercenaries mode. This is the first game that did Mercenaries, and it's really awesome. But my version doesn't work, unfortunately, because there's a big scratch on the game, so I need to get another one. And I was going to show you my PlayStation, and there's a lot of man hours on my PlayStation, but I cannot find it. The cool thing, though, about this, is that happened, no, is that if you bought Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, you got a demo of Dino Crisis, which is another really fun Capcom game when you fight dinosaurs. But if you also, which I also have that back here, if you buy that, you get a demo of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Resident Evil 4, when you get to play as Leon again. This was like game of the year for a while, in my opinion, because this game is super fun, so atmospheric. It's still got the horror, but it does include action elements. Really enjoy this game though, and it comes with this collector tin that I got because I'm super into the franchise, and I never took this out, but it's a little framed poster of Leon, and this actually came with a poster that I had. I have no idea where it is, but that is Resident Evil 4. The fight with El Gigante is legendary. My fight was anyway. It took 6 times to beat him. Resident Evil 5. Not my favorite one in the series. You get to play as Chris again, and just like I said, the last one had action elements. Resident Evil 5 is a straight action game. It's super fun. It's probably not on the same level as Uncharted, but it still has a Resident Evil feel to it, even though this is an action game. Sheva is so bad of a character, just AI wise, because she got me killed so many times. So many times. Chris is on roids in this. Like, look at the size of his arm. It's gigantic. Played this on my Xbox 360. I really want to get the HD collection of the remake and a couple of these other games, because this is a really fun game, even though it is straight action, and the DLC stuff is really cool. The Mercenaries mode for 5 is awesome. The Mercenaries mode for 4 is also awesome. PlayStation 2 does have a small niche here in the Resident Evil series. Code Veronica X. This is probably one of the hardest games I've ever played. And it looks the best too. Like on PlayStation, this looks really good. Of the original series, this one probably looks the best with the new engine that they used with this game. Super hard though. Like, the last of the main series games is Resident Evil 6. This is the last series game that I bought for the PlayStation 3. I since don't have my PlayStation 3 anymore. I'm saving for a PS4 so I can buy the collection again, because I really want to play these again. 6 was fun. It has elements of Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 4. When Leon's campaign is the best, in my opinion. It brings back the horror element of the game. It's super creepy, it's very dark, it's atmospheric. It's everything I liked in the original series, and then some. But Chris's story in this, is very good. but that he's in the more action part of the game. And I wish that he wasn't. I wish that he was, more like the DLC content that you got for Resident Evil 5, I think. The Haunted Nightmare, when you get to go and play with Jill again, and it's like a straight throwback to the original game. Really cool. But the graphics in this are very good. Really good animation. I love this game, Resident Evil 6. We'll talk about 2 more PS2 games. Unfortunately, I don't have the case for the one, but there are technically 3 here. We'll talk about the first one first. Dead Aim. Bruce McGavin. This game I beat in like 2 hours. It's super quick, but it's also really fun. It could have been more fun if you could actually play with the gun con. The American version did not come with a gun con, only the Asian version of it. I have no idea why. You just could not play with the gun con with this. But this is fun. It takes place on a tanker. It's basically or a cruise ship. It's basically the story for Resident Evil Gaiden with Barry and Leon, but it's a completely different character. I actually think that Gavin or Bruce and Leon work for the same company that Leon works for in Resident Evil 4. I think. It's been a while since I played this game, but I think they are partners or something. Like, this guy is connected to the Resident Evil series. This is a different virus, though. I forget what virus it is in this one. You get the T-virus in Resident Evil, T-virus in Resident Evil 3, Lost Plagueis in Resident Evil 4, G-virus in Resident Evil 2. So I think this might have to do with the Veronica strain in Code Veronica, but I can't remember. What is in here? God of War. I don't know why God of War is in here, but it is. Yes, we have moved on. Resident Evil Outbreak Fall 2 has to be one of the most underrated games in the franchise. And here's the reason why. Because this brought back the RPD. This brought back Resident Evil for me. This brought back Raccoon City, the whole elements from Resident Evil 2 and 3 that I loved. And you could play as an RPD police officer, Kevin. And I always liked that element. You get to learn things that happened in Resident Evil 2 that bridge the gap from 2 to 3. Really fun. And I always wanted another one. This one was so far ahead of its time because this was an massive multiplayer type of game before it got really popular. It was on the PlayStation 2 using online play. And you could play as different characters. They all had different special abilities, so there were some RPD elements, or RPG elements in this game, and I think it was just way ahead of its time. I said this on Instagram earlier. If we get a Resident Evil, I would love a Resident Evil Outbreak File 3. If they could find a way to do it and bring back these characters in a really cool game, all I gotta say is Skyrim, Resident Evil style. I need it. I forgot to mention that my copy of Resident Evil 4 was the GameCube version. Well, so are these. The Resident Evil remake and Resident Evil 0. I really, really enjoy these. I still say that the GameCube is one of the most underrated consoles and underutilized consoles ever because the graphics on these games are awesome. They hold up today. They look amazing. Like, I'm not even talking about the HD transfers that they did for the PS4s and the Xbox Ones. This looks awesome. Beat both these games. Resident Evil 0 I think is really underrated. I really liked playing as Billy and Rebecca and learning what happened before this. This is also fun, really hard too. Not the easiest game in the world to play. But speaking of my GameCube, here's my GameCube. I got the black version and it still has the memory card. I don't know where my PlayStation is. I was gonna show that to you too, but a lot of man hours been on this with the Resident Evil series. So last of the Resident Evil collection is the books. Yes, there was a book series written by S.D. Perry, and I have all of them except for one. I had let someone, a girlfriend, I think, borrow one of the games, so not one of the games, but the books, and I never got it back. I want my book back. First is The Umbrella Conspiracy. I love this book. I've read it like 4 times, so you can tell. It's just the game novelization to a T. If you need to know how to make a Resident Evil movie, this book is the book you need to read. Your script is right here. Resident Evil City of the Dead. This is a novelization of the second game, and it's also just as good. Not just as good. It's still a good book, but it's probably not as good as the first one in my opinion. But I really enjoy this one, and I love that cover. That is awesome. Next up, I don't know, we're not doing these in order. This is a novelization of Resident Evil Apocalypse. I don't know why I have it. Next up is the Resident Evil Code Veronica book. I never really read this one. That's probably my original marker, because it's not as good as the first few in my opinion. But I love that cover. This is also, of course, the novelization of Resident Evil Code Veronica. Next up, of course, I've read this book a million times. This is the novelization of Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. I love how Jill looks on that, because she looks like a completely different character. Her hair is way too red. But really good book. This explains Operation Watchdog with so much detail. This is probably my second favorite book in the franchise. Still book in the series. But yeah, second to the first one. Really good. Explains Carlos a lot better. You actually like him a lot more in the book. The last of the true Resident Evil novelizations. This is Resident Evil 0 Hour. It is the novelization of Resident Evil 0 with Billy and Rebecca. Good book. I think I've only read it a couple times, but it really gives you a more widespread understanding of the Bravo team that you go to rescue in the original Resident Evil game. Last up is an original story. This is Resident Evil Caliban Cove, and it is a Rebecca Chambers book, also written by S.D. Perry. Resident Evil Caliban Cove, weird story. It's very weird, but Barry is also in this for a little bit. I think this is the second book in the series. So this takes place after Resident Evil 1, so it kind of tells you what happened to Barry and Rebecca after Resident Evil. It's interesting. There you have it, guys. A Resident Evil collection. I adore this series, as you can tell. I have books, I have games, I have posters. I did have a poster of Leon, but I don't know where it is. And I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of the Resident Evil series in the comments down below. Let me know what your favorite horror series is. I'm actually a big Silent Hill fan too. That was the phone. I can't win with this video. I'm a big Silent Hill fan too. I have the remasters of the first 3, and I had the original on PlayStation. So guys, like I said, let me know what your favorite horror franchise is, game series wise, in the comments down below. If you're new to my channel, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that bell button. That way you get notified about all my future videos. I'm finally getting ready to start my reviews for Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2. I'm also getting ready to roll out my review of Halloween 4 with my boy Lee from over at Drum Dums. As always, guys, I would appreciate it if you check me out on social media. All those links are, of course, in the description box down below. And also check me out at Cavern of Terror on Stardust. But most importantly, guys, I'm Zach. This has been the Cavern of Terror. Stay metal, my friends.